In the 1850s, a young Herman Melville arrives at a modest inn, seeking the elusive story of Thomas Nickerson, the last living survivor of the ill-fated Essex, a whale ship that met disaster 3 decades prior. Melville offers a handsome payment, but Nickerson, more focused on crafting intricate ships in bottles, refuses. The past holds too much pain, and dredging it up isn't worth any sum. Disappointed, Melville prepares to leave, believing the trip was in vain. But Nickerson's wife, sensing their financial struggles, promises to persuade her husband to share his story. Reluctantly, Nickerson begins recounting the Essex's doomed voyage. His tale transports Melville back to the early 1820s, an era when whale oil was the lifeblood of industry, fueling lamps and soap production. Whaling was dangerous work, yet it attracted bold sailors, willing to chase fortune across treacherous waters. Among them was Owen Chase, a seasoned whaler from Nantucket. Married to Peggy, who was expecting their first child, Chase was eager for promotion. However, instead of the captaincy he hoped for, Chase was assigned as first mate aboard the Essex. The owners handed command to George Pollard Jr., an inexperienced but well-connected mariner from a prominent family. Frustrated, Owen reluctantly accepted the role, tempted by the promise that if he helped secure 2,000 barrels of whale oil, the next ship would be his. He returned home to share the news with Peggy, who feared he might miss the birth of their child. Before he left, she gave him a necklace as a token to keep him connected to her across the vast ocean. When the Essex set sail, Peggy waved him off from shore, her image lingering in Owen's mind as he joined the crew aboard the ship. Two young boys, 14-year-old Thomas Nickerson and his friend Barzillai Ray, also boarded the Essex, eager to earn their first whaling pins. Owen greeted an old friend, Matthew Joy, the ship's second mate, before exchanging tense pleasantries with Captain Pollard. From the outset, it was clear that ambition would strain the relationship between the two leaders. On the morning of departure, a tangled rope threatened to delay the voyage. Owen swiftly climbed the mast and cut the snag, earning admiration from the crew while Pollard watched with quiet resentment. Tension simmered further during their first dinner together, when Pollard made a pointed remark about Owen's father, a subtle insult that left Owen seething. At sea, the crew adapted to life aboard the Essex. When young Nickerson suffered from seasickness, Owen jokingly threatened to push him overboard, only for the boy to vomit on him. Despite the rough initiation, the gesture marked Nickerson's acceptance into the crew's brotherhood. For a time, camaraderie flourished below deck, with music and laughter breaking the monotony of life at sea. As they sailed toward the Gulf Stream, Owen warned of an approaching storm, but Pollard insisted on keeping full sail to make up lost time. The decision proved disastrous. A violent tempest hit, nearly capsizing the ship. Owen and Matthew fought through the chaos, cutting sails free to stabilize the Essex. Though they saved the ship, Pollard blamed Owen for undermining his authority, deepening the rift between them. Months passed before the crew finally encountered a pod of sperm whales. Lowering the whaleboats, they gave chase, harpoons at the ready. Owen's boat targeted the largest whale, which fought fiercely as blood erupted from its blowhole. Nickerson watched in a mix of awe and revulsion, later forced to climb inside the carcass to retrieve every ounce of blubber, a task so vile it left him doubting he'd ever return to sea. Despite their efforts, the whale yielded only 47 barrels of oil. Desperate, the Essex ventured further into the Pacific, chasing rumors of whale-rich waters. In Ecuador, the crew met Captain Clemente Palau, who shared a warning about a monstrous white whale lurking in the open seas. Pollard dismissed the tale as superstition, but Owen couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. Ignoring the warning, the Essex pressed onward into uncharted waters. Their fortunes seemed to change as they found themselves surrounded by whales. But joy quickly turned to horror. A massive bull sperm whale, larger than any they had seen, charged at Owen's boat, capsizing it. The crew swam back to the Essex, only to discover the whale following them, as if determined to destroy the ship. The whale rammed the Essex repeatedly, splintering its hull. Owen drove a harpoon into its side, but the beast retaliated with a thunderous blow from its tail, sending sailors sprawling. As the ship sank beneath the waves, the crew scrambled into lifeboats, carrying meager supplies and little hope. days blurred into weeks as they drifted under the relentless sun, the white whale circling them like a specter. Hunger gnawed at their spirits, and thirst consumed their strength. With no land or rescue in sight, desperation forced the men to a horrifying decision. They began to eat the bodies of those who perished. Nickerson paused at this point in his story, shame choking his words. His wife's gentle reassurance, however, gave him the strength to continue. The boats eventually separated, carried by currents to different fates. One was lost to the sea. In another, Henry Coffin, Pollard's cousin, volunteered to sacrifice himself so the others might survive. Owen's boat drifted aimlessly until the white whale reappeared, towering above them like a phantom. With harpoon in hand, Owen prepared to strike, but as he stared into the creature's eye, he saw a reflection of himself. Tired, broken, and weary of violence. In a moment of profound understanding, he lowered the harpoon. The whale turned and disappeared into the depths, never to be seen again. On the 87th day, Pollard's boat was rescued by a passing ship. Owen's boat reached Chile's Alejandro Selkirk Island 3 days later. The survivors were eventually returned to Nantucket, where they were reunited with their families. Owen met his newborn daughter, Phoebe Ann, but the joy of survival was overshadowed by the horrors they had endured. The survivors chose silence, unwilling to burden others with the truth of what had transpired at sea. The shipowners urged Pollard and Owen to keep the story hidden, fearing the impact on the whaling industry. Disillusioned by the deceit, Owen resigned from whaling altogether, leaving the industry behind for good. Before parting ways, Owen gave young Nickerson one of his prized whaling pins, a symbol of the bond they shared and a reminder to follow his own path. Nickerson ended his tale with a brief note about Pollard's fate. His attempt to hunt the white whale again ended in failure, and he spent his final years in obscurity in the Hawaiian Islands. Owen, on the other hand, moved to New Bedford, where he became a merchant captain, abandoning the life of a whaler forever. Melville listened intently, captivated by Nickerson's harrowing story. When asked if the tale was enough for a book, Melville smiled. "Not just a book," he replied, "a novel, one born from truth but shaped by imagination." As Melville prepared to leave, the two men shared a brief moment of levity, discussing news of a new discovery, oil found underground in Pennsylvania, signaling the beginning of a new era. Returning to Massachusetts, Melville began to write, pouring the essence of Nickerson's story into Moby Dick. The novel, published in 1851, initially received mixed reviews, but later garnered the admiration of Nathaniel Hawthorne, who praised it as an epic worthy of Homer. Thus, the tragic voyage of the Essex became immortalized in literature, a tale of obsession, survival, and the depths of the human soul.